Between instinct and denial, a voice kept whispering, "This isn't over." The flashing lights faded in his rearview mirror as he drove back toward the house, the necklace resting on the passenger seat. The night outside was still, but inside his chest, a storm gathered strength. The house would be waiting, silent, hollow, echoing with memories that refused to let go. Raj dreaded the loneliness, but he also dreaded what he might find hidden within it. As he pulled into the driveway, a thought clenched his gut so tightly it made him shiver. What if Emily hadn't died here tonight? What if she had chosen to disappear? The key turned in the lock with a hollow click. He stepped inside, the air stale and unmoving. The necklace gleamed faintly in his hand as if mocking him. Raj closed the door behind him, his heart pounding. The silence of the house swallowed him whole, and with it came the first seed of doubt that would soon consume his life. The house was too quiet. Silence pressed against the walls, thick and suffocating, as if it had taken on a life of its own. Raj sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the indentation on the cushion where Emily used to curl up with her tea. The faint smell of her vanilla-scented candles lingered, clinging to the air like a ghost. Weeks had passed since the crash, yet every night Raj still expected to hear her keys jangling at the door, her voice calling his name. Instead, all he heard was the creak of floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, and the steady, aching rhythm of his own breath. He wandered from room to room like a restless shadow. Their bedroom looked untouched, pillows arranged neatly, her jewelry box resting on the dresser, her favorite sweater draped over the chair. He pressed his face into the fabric, inhaling her scent until tears blurred his vision. But something gnawed at him, sharper than grief. He remembered asking the police about her belongings. Most of them, they said, had burned in the fire. Yet when he opened her closet now, he noticed gaps, empty hangers where dresses should be, missing pairs of shoes. It was subtle, but it didn't fit the story of total destruction. Raj's thoughts fractured into memories. Emily laughing in the sunlight, running barefoot across the grass, her hair wild and unrestrained. Their late-night conversations where she whispered dreams of traveling the world, only to wake the next morning withdrawn, guarded, as if she regretted sharing. He closed his eyes. She was never fully mine. Was she already slipping away before that night? The kitchen offered no comfort. The mug she always used was gone. He checked every cabinet twice. He remembered distinctly. It had a crack near the handle. She refused to throw it out. Why wasn't it here? Why wasn't it listed among the burned items? He slammed the cupboard shut, his frustration and spilling over. "Damn it, Emily!" His voice echoed, startling him. He stood in the middle of the kitchen, breathing hard, his reflection fractured in the dark window. He whispered to the empty house, "Did you leave me, or did you die?" The questions hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. At night the house came alive with memories. He would see her at the corner of his eye, Emily brushing past the hallway, her laughter fading down the stairs. He would jolt awake from dreams where she stood at the foot of their bed, eyes filled with secrets she never spoke aloud. Raj began keeping the necklace close, sometimes clutched in his fist, sometimes under his pillow. It was the only piece of her the fire had spared, and its survival gnawed at him more than soothed him. Why this, and not her wedding ring? Why this, and not her phone? One evening he sat at the dining table with the necklace spread out before him. He traced the charred edges with his thumb. "This doesn't add up," he murmured. "None of this makes sense." His mind replayed the night of the crash, the sheriff avoiding eye contact, the rushed explanations, the lack of a body. The certainty of their words clashed violently with the uncertainty pounding in his chest. The house amplified his doubt. Every missing item, every unanswered question whispered the same chilling possibility. Emily's disappearance was not an accident, and it might not have been death. Raj leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling, heart racing. The silence of the house no longer felt empty. It felt like a conspiracy, pressing down on him, daring him to uncover the truth. And in that moment, he knew his grief had shifted. It was no longer just about loss. It was about suspicion. The necklace glimmered faintly under the dim light, as if calling him toward a path he wasn't sure he wanted to take. He clenched his fists, whispered into the dark, "If you're out there, Emily, I'll find you." The neighborhood looked unchanged from the outside. Trimmed lawns, porch lights flickering, dogs barking at shadows. Yet for Raj, every street corner, every familiar face seemed charged with hidden meaning. He walked home from the grocery store one evening when voices drifted across the still air. Two women stood at the edge of a driveway, their heads bent close. His name wasn't spoken, but hers was. "Emily always seemed restless," one whispered. The words carried clearly through the quiet. "Like she was looking for something she couldn't find here." Raj slowed, his pulse quickening. The other woman sighed. "You remember the calls? Late nights, her standing outside in the cold, whispering into her phone. My husband said he saw her drive off more than once, real late. Didn't look like errands to me." Raj's hand tightened on the grocery bag until the plastic cut into his palm. He forced himself to keep walking, eyes straight ahead, pretending not to hear, but the words stuck, sharp as glass, restless, whispering, driving off. Back inside his house, he dropped the bag on the counter, chest heaving. The silence that greeted him no longer felt empty. It felt accusing. His mind replayed the fragments he'd overheard, stitching them together with memories he had tried to ignore. Nights when he woke to find her side of the bed cold. Afternoons when she claimed she was at the library, yet returned with no books. Times when her phone lit up with unknown numbers, and she tucked it away too quickly. Raj sat at the kitchen table, gripping the edge until his knuckles whitened. "What were you hiding, Emily?" he whispered. The necklace lay where he had left it, its charred edges glinting under the dim light. He stared at it as though it held answers, but all it gave him was the echo of betrayal. Flashbacks blurred into his thoughts. Emily's distant gaze during dinner, her evasive tea, one when he asked simple questions, the way she sometimes laughed at things she never explained. Back then, he told himself marriage was about trust, about patience. Now those reassurances curdled into suspicion. He rose suddenly, pacing the living room. Every creak of the floorboards felt like an intrusion. The house whispered to him, fueling his paranoia. He imagined her voice on those calls, soft, conspiratorial, filled with secrets meant for someone else. The thought gnawed at him. Had she been planning her escape all along? A chill crawled over his skin. Maybe the crash wasn't an end, but a cover. Maybe the whispers weren't gossip. They were glimpses of a truth he had refused to see. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass of the window, staring into the dark street. Somewhere out there, Emily's past was alive, breathing, unraveling everything they had built. His reflection in the glass stared back, eyes sunken with exhaustion, jaw tight with anger. He clenched his fists. If she had left him by choice, if she had betrayed their vows, he needed to know. The silence of the house seemed to dare him. Find out. Or drown in doubt. Raj turned sharply, his decision forming with a clarity that startled him. Tomorrow, he would start digging into her calls, her friends, anything that might explain the shadows trailing her. The grocery bag still sat unopened on the counter. He didn't care. His hunger was no longer for food but for truth, however devastating it might be. The night deepened around him, heavy with secrets, and in that suffocating quiet, Raj made his silent vow. He would uncover what Emily had been hiding. The morning sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds, striping the living room in alternating shadows. Raj sat surrounded by boxes of Emily's belongings the police had returned after the investigation. Her clothes, her books, fragments of a life that once felt whole. He had avoided opening them, afraid of the grief they would unleash, but now suspicion drove his hands. One by one, he pulled items free. A scarf he had bought her on their anniversary, a worn-out paperback with notes scribbled in the margins. None of it eased the hollow ache gnawing inside him. Then, at the bottom of a box, a slim folder caught his eye. It wasn't police-issued. It was Emily's. Raj slid it open. Inside were receipts, hotel bookings, rental cars, and unexplained bank withdrawals. His breath hitched as he scanned the dates, all within weeks of the crash. Hotel Indigo, Dallas. One night, cash payment. Car rental, Chevy Malibu, 3 days. His pulse quickened. She had been preparing something, moving through shadows he never saw. Raj muttered to himself, voice low and uneven. "What were you doing, Emily? Who were you meeting?" The evidence spread across the table like a puzzle, each piece pointing to a life he didn't recognize. The amounts withdrawn were careful, never too large, never too small, as if she were deliberately avoiding suspicion. He found a receipt for a storage unit in another county. His hands shook as he held it, realizing this was no random accident. Emily hadn't been planning a weekend getaway. She had been building an escape route. Raj sank into the chair, head in his hands. Memories tumbled back. Her late-night phone calls, the nervous way she locked her laptop when he walked into the room, the unexplained absences she brushed off with a smile. He slammed a fist against the table, the sound echoing through the empty house. "You were leaving me," he said aloud, the words tasting bitter, poisoned by betrayal. But beneath the anger was something more dangerous: determination. If Emily had walked out of his life, he needed to know why. If she had faked her death, he needed to uncover how. The receipts were a trail, breadcrumbs left behind in her haste. Raj began sorting them by date, aligning each one with his memory. On the nights she claimed she was with friends, she was instead in hotel rooms. On the days she told him she was running errands, she was pulling money from accounts he didn't know she had. The truth unfurled in cruel detail. Emily had been building another life, and she hadn't intended for him to be part of it. Raj leaned back, staring at the ceiling, chest tight. The grief that once consumed him now burned into something sharper. He no longer doubted she was alive. The question had shifted. Where was she now, and who was she with? He gathered the papers into a neat pile, slipping them into a folder of his own. His private investigation had begun. The police had written the case off, but he would not. That night, he laid the receipts out again under a single desk lamp. Shadows stretched across the walls as he traced the addresses with his finger. The map of her lies grew clearer with every detail. Raj whispered into the silence, his voice steady now. "I'll find you, Emily. And I'll find out why." The lamp flickered once before holding steady, casting the folder in a harsh glow. The paper trail was no longer just evidence. It was a roadmap to betrayal, and Raj was ready to follow it into the dark. Raj sat hunched over the kitchen table, receipts and documents scattered around him like pieces of a shattered life. The folder of Emily's secrets lay open, its contents refusing to let him rest. His laptop glowed in the dim room, a low hum filling the silence. He wasn't searching aimlessly anymore. He was tracking, hunting. It was during one of these sleepless nights that a headline caught his eye. "Community fundraiser in Oklahoma City draws large crowds." The article itself was unremarkable, but the thumbnail image froze him in place. A woman stood at the edge of the crowd. Her face was turned slightly, but not enough to hide her profile. Raj's breath stopped. The sharp line of her jaw, the way her hair fell loose, brushed behind one ear in the exact absent-minded way Emily always did. Even her posture, shoulders slightly slouched as if carrying an invisible weight, was painfully familiar. Raj's heart thundered. He leaned closer to the screen, enlarging the picture until the pixels blurred. "It can't be," he whispered. But the more he stared, the less room he had for denial. His grief-hardened memory of her face, the one he carried like a scar, aligned perfectly with the woman on the screen. Hope and dread crashed together in his chest. If this was Emily, then everything he had been feeling, fearing, and suspecting wasn't madness, it was truth. He scrolled through the article again, desperate for more images. Only one other photo featured her, an indistinct figure in the background, half hidden by others. Yet even there, he recognized her. The tilt of her head, the familiar tuck of hair behind her ear. Raj shut the laptop with a trembling hand, his reflection ghosting in the dark screen. "She's alive," he said aloud, voice breaking. "She's alive." But the words didn't taste of relief. They carried venom. If she was alive, then she hadn't died in that burning wreck. Shamaki. He had left him to grieve, to bury a ghost, while she built a life elsewhere. The questions swarmed, loud and unrelenting. Why Oklahoma? Who was she with? And most tormenting of all, why had she abandoned him so completely? Raj pressed his palms to his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. He remembered her laugh, the softness in her voice during their first months together, the passion that once bound them tightly. But then came the late-night phone calls, the hollow excuses, the growing silence between them. The woman in Oklahoma wasn't the Emily he had loved. She was the Emily who had betrayed him. Still, he couldn't turn away. He needed confirmation. He reopened the laptop, freezing the blurry image once more. He studied her eyes, or at least what little he could make out. They weren't fully visible, yet something about them pierced him. A stranger's eyes in a familiar face. Raj whispered to himself, his voice raw. "I have to see her. I have to know." The decision hardened within him. This wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was obsession. He would follow the trail wherever it led, no matter how deep or dark. The glow of the laptop cast his face in pale light, his eyes burning with equal parts love and fury. Outside, the wind rattled against the window as though urging him forward. He closed the folder of receipts, packed it carefully, and slid it into his bag. The paper trail had led him to suspicion. Now a stranger's eyes had given him proof. Raj's obsession had a new fuel, the living ghost of his wife, Raj's fingers tightened on the steering wheel as the desert highway stretched endlessly before him. The Oklahoma photographs had lit a fire inside him, but it was the trail of credit card charges, newly discovered through late-night digging, that finally pointed him south. Arizona. A name on a receipt. A hotel reservation. A thread he could no longer ignore. 2 days of driving left him hollow-eyed and wired with anticipation. He crossed into a small Arizona town just as the sun was setting, its orange light bathing the stucco buildings and narrow streets in a glow that felt both alive and cruel. He had rehearsed 1,000 outcomes in his mind, but nothing prepared him for the moment when he finally saw her. Emily. She was standing outside a modest grocery store, laughing as she adjusted a paper bag in her arms. The sound didn't reach him from across the street, but the expression on her face did. It was the unmistakable curve of her smile, one he thought had been buried with her ashes. But she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, taller, broad-shouldered, with his hand resting easily on the small of her back. His casual intimacy made Raj's stomach twist. The man leaned in, said something, and Emily laughed again, so freely, so effortlessly, as if she had never known the shadow of grief. Raj stumbled backward into the side of his car, chest heaving. His heart pounded so violently he thought it might break through his ribs. She was alive. She was here. And she was his wife. Yet she stood in front of him as if she belonged to someone else. The sight was a dagger. Grief, which had lived inside him like a parasite for 2 years, suddenly shifted into something darker. Rage. He ducked behind a parked truck, watching them load groceries into the back of a dusty SUV. Every detail carved itself into his memory. The way she brushed hair from her face, the way the man leaned to kiss her temple, the way she didn't flinch. She let him. She welcomed it. Raj pressed his forehead against the steering wheel, sweat dripping down his temple. The woman he had mourned, the woman whose necklace he had clutched in his trembling hands, had not only survived, she had built a second life. "Why?" he muttered. His voice cracked, sounding foreign in his own ears. "Why would you do this to me?" The questions clawed at him, demanding answers. Had she ever loved him? Were their nights of whispered promises nothing but lies? Or had she simply grown tired of being tied to him, to the weight of his immigrant struggles and endless sacrifices? The SUV engine roared to life. Raj jerked upright, instinct taking over. He slid into his own car, headlights off, and followed at a cautious distance. They drove through winding desert streets until they pulled up to a 1-story adobe house with pale walls and a tiled roof. A small garden bloomed in front, vibrant under the porch light. It was ordinary, peaceful, domestic. Emily carried the groceries inside while the man wrapped an arm around her waist, stealing a kiss before they disappeared behind the door. The image seared itself into Raj's mind, and he felt something break inside him. He sat in the darkness for hours, engine off, the chirping of desert crickets filling the silence. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, alive, radiant, and betraying him. Part of him wanted to storm the house, demand answers, shake her until the truth fell from her lips. Another part, quieter but no less powerful, wanted to collapse into her arms, to beg her to explain, to tell him that this was all some cruel mistake. Love and fury battled within him, each as fierce as the other. But as dawn began to creep across the horizon, painting the sky in muted shades of gray, one thought settled coldly in Raj's mind. Emily had chosen this life. She had chosen another man. And if he wanted the truth or justice, he would have to take it for himself. With trembling hands, Raj turned the key in the ignition. The engine rumbled awake. He wasn't leaving. Not yet. This small town had become his prison, and Emily, his resurrected ghost, was the only key. Raj had rehearsed the moment 1,000 times in his head while sitting in the shadows of his car outside her adobe house. But when the time finally came, when the opportunity presented itself, his legs felt like stone. It was late evening when Emily stepped out of the house alone. The man was gone, the SUV missing from the driveway. She carried a small trash bag to the curb, humming softly to herself. For Raj, the sound was both tender and cruel, an echo of the life she had stolen from him. He swallowed hard, then moved. Emily. The name left his lips before he could stop himself. She froze mid-step, the bag slipping from her hand and scattering bottles across the gravel. Slowly she turned, and for a moment her face went pale. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by something sharper, annoyance, not surprise. "Raj," she said flatly, "you shouldn't be here." Raj's throat tightened. The air between them thickened with years of silence, betrayal, and unanswered questions. He took a step closer, searching her face for warmth, for any trace of the woman he had once loved. "You're alive," he whispered, his voice trembling. "All this time, I thought—" "You thought I was dead," she interrupted, her tone cold, cutting. "That's the way it had to be." Her words struck like a blow. Raj shook his head, his hands trembling at his sides. Had to be. Emily, I buried you in my heart. I carried your necklace like it was all I had left. Do you know what that did to me?" Her eyes flickered, but only for a moment. Then she crossed her arms, hardening herself. "I felt trapped, Raj. With you, with the life we built." I couldn't breathe. Raj staggered back as if the confession were a physical strike. "Trapped? I gave up everything, my family, my country, to build something for us. Every sacrifice, every night I worked myself to the bone. It was for you." Her voice lowered, laced with bitterness. "And I never asked for that. You smothered me with your dreams, your expectations. I wanted out, and the accident. It was the only way." Raj's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the crickets chirping in the desert night. "You staged it?" His voice broke on the word. She didn't flinch. "Yes, with him. We planned it together. I left because it was the only choice I had." The casual cruelty of her confession left Raj hollow. He felt the weight of 2 years of grief collapsing into nothingness. His tears blurred the edges of her face, but her expression remained cold, distant, resolute. "You could have told me," he whispered. "You could have left. I would have let you go if that's what you wanted." "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "You wouldn't have. You would have followed me, begged me to stay. I know you, Raj. This was the only way to end it." Her words cut deeper than any wound. For the first time, he saw not the woman he had loved, but a stranger. Someone willing to kill her past to be reborn elsewhere. Silence stretched between them, suffocating. Emily bent down, gathering the bottles back into the torn trash bag as if their conversation was nothing more than an inconvenience. Raj's lips parted, but no words came. Every fiber of his being screamed for answers, for justice, for something that would undo the nightmare unraveling before him. Yet Emily's cold dismissal told him he meant nothing now. She straightened, trash bag in hand, and met his gaze one final time. "Go home, Raj. Whatever we had is over." And with that, she turned her back, walking into the warm light of the house that no longer had room for him. Raj remained rooted on the curb, broken. His grief had transformed into rage, and now rage was calcifying into something darker, something dangerous. The night swallowed him whole. Raj couldn't move. He stood frozen on the curb, staring at the door Emily had disappeared through. Her words, sharp, deliberate, merciless, clawed at his chest. The woman he once carried in his dreams had become a ghost dressed in flesh, speaking truths too dark to bear. But then she came back out. The trash bag gone, her hands empty. For a moment, Raj thought she might apologize, soften. Instead, she sighed, almost impatiently, as though they were discussing an overdue bill rather than the ruins of a marriage. "You should know, Raj," she said, her voice lower, more dangerous. "It wasn't just the accident. That night was only the final act. I had been planning my escape long before the fire." Raj's stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" Her lips curved into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You think the police just happened to believe the crash was fatal? That the forensics team simply overlooked everything? No. I made sure they found what they needed. I planted enough evidence to close the case." He shook his head, disbelief flooding him. "That's impossible." "No," she snapped. "It was easy. A few late-night phone calls, a forged letter to my insurance company, fake dental records slipped into the hospital system. All it took was knowing who to charm, who to scare, and who to pay." Raj's knees felt weak. The world tilted. This wasn't just betrayal. This was orchestration, a deception built brick by brick until it collapsed over him like a tomb. "And while you mourned me," Emily continued, her tone chillingly casual, "I was already gone. A new name, a new life. But even before that, Raj, I toyed with you." Her words echoed, venomous. Flashbacks ripped through his mind. The nights she claimed to be working late, the sudden family emergencies that pulled her away, the coldness in her eyes when he tried to kiss her. Each memory now glowed with new Mia, Ning, reshaped into lies. "You remember those phone calls?" she asked, tilting her head. "The ones you thought were business? They were him. Every night I whispered to him while you slept in the next room." Raj's breath caught. The image was unbearable. Emily whispering words of love to another man while he lay just a wall away, dreaming of her. "And those absences?" she added. "Hotel receipts don't hide themselves. You must have found them by now. That was me, Raj. Laughing, drinking, loving him while you sat at home convincing yourself I was yours." Her voice grew colder, darker, like a knife pressing harder against skin. "I enjoyed watching you unravel even before I left. Every time you questioned me, I lied. Every time you doubted me, I smiled. Do you know why? Because it made me feel powerful. And you," she jabbed a finger at him, "you were so desperate, so blind that you believed me every single time." Raj staggered back, his mind splintering. A dozen voices screamed inside his head. "She's lying. She's exaggerating. This can't be true." But the details, the receipts, the missing items, the hollow look in her eyes long before the accident, fit too perfectly. His chest heaved. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" Emily's eyes flickered, revealing a glint of cruelty. "Because you needed closure. You wanted the truth. Here it is, Raj. The truth is that you were never enough. And I don't regret leaving. Not for a second." Silence fell heavy between them. The desert air pressed down on him like a suffocating blanket. For the first time, Raj felt the edge of madness slicing into his mind. He couldn't tell if she was speaking reality or if this was some elaborate performance meant to break him completely. He clutched his head, gasping for breath, as though the lies themselves had weight. Was she always this person? Or had love blinded me so much that I created Saul, only one who never existed? Emily turned away, her silhouette framed by the porch light. "Go back to your life, Raj," she said coldly. "If you still have one." The door shut. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot. Raj stood trembling in the street, unable to distinguish truth from manipulation. Everything he thought he knew, about Emily, about himself, was dissolving. And in the void, something else began to grow. A dangerous certainty that if no one else would expose Emily's lies, he would. The days after Emily's confession blurred together, a haze of liquor and sleepless nights. Raj would sit in the dark of his rented room, a half-empty bottle of whiskey sweating on the table, his hands trembling as though poisoned. Every word she'd said replayed in his head, looping endlessly, digging deeper. "You were never enough. I don't regret leaving." At first he told himself it was lies, twisted words meant to break him. But then the receipts, the absences, the late-night calls, all the scattered puzzle pieces, fit neatly into place. Her voice had been too steady, too practiced, for it to be invention. The truth, whether he wanted it or not, had crushed him. He began avoiding calls from friends. Messages went unread, voicemails deleted. The few who managed to reach him heard a slurred voice, impatient and volatile. "I'm fine," he snapped more than once. "Just leave me alone." But he wasn't fine. The walls around him felt like a cage closing in tighter each day. One evening, Arjun, his closest friend in the U.S., knocked at his door. Raj opened it reluctantly, the sour stench of alcohol seeping out. Arjun stared at him, sunken eyes, unshaven face, shirt wrinkled and stained. "Raj, what happened to you?" Arjun asked softly. "Nothing," Raj muttered, stepping back. "Go home." Arjun didn't move. This isn't you. Emily is gone. Whatever she did, you can't drown in it. The words hit Raj like stones, but instead of grounding him, they scattered his fragile control. His chest heaved with anger. You don't understand. She's alive, Arjun. Alive and Lapa. Diving like none of this mattered. I buried her in my soul while she was in someone else's arms. Arjun's face tightened with pity. Then let her go. You'll kill yourself if you don't. Raj slammed the door, his breath ragged, fury boiling under his skin. Let her go? How could he? She had staged her death, lied to him, stripped him of his sanity. If he let go, it meant admitting that his life had been nothing but her game. That night, he drove to her neighborhood. Parked on the corner, headlights off, he watched. Through his windshield, he saw her silhouette moving inside the house, her laughter faint through open windows. Another man's shadow crossed the light. They kissed in the kitchen as though the world was theirs to claim. Raj's fingers dug into the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His chest ached with something primal, rage mixed with longing, grief blended with obsession. He returned the next night, and the one after. Each visit lasted longer, each glimpse of her life twisting the knife deeper. He told himself he wasn't stalking. He was gathering truth, building a record of her lies. But in the silence of the car, he knew the truth. He couldn't stay away. Back in his room, the whiskey bottles multiplied. The mirror showed a stranger, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched, shoulders hunched under invisible weight. He muttered to himself, fragments of Emily's words mixed with his own curses. She toyed with me. She lied to everyone. She thinks I'll just disappear. His obsession became oxygen. Without it, he couldn't breathe. Friends stopped trying to reach him. Work slipped through his fingers. He belonged only to the night now, to the streets outside Emily's new home. And somewhere, in the haze of grief and fury, a decision was forming, dark, unshakable. Raj had reached his breaking point. Raj sat in his car outside the police precinct for nearly an hour, the engine idling, his palms slick with sweat. The whiskey from the night before still lingered in his bloodstream, a dull throb at the back of his skull. He stared at the building, its pale stone walls and neat windows, the American flag swaying gently above the entrance. Inside those walls was the power he no longer trusted himself to wield alone. Finally, he stepped out. His legs trembled as he crossed the parking lot, clutching the folder he had compiled, hotel receipts, bank statements, copies of forged documents he'd uncovered, and his handwritten notes chronicling her betrayal. Proof, he told himself. This is proof that Emily destroyed me. The officer at the front desk, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, glanced up. Can I help you? Raj's voice cracked. Yes, my wife. She faked her death. She staged an accident, forged records, manipulated authorities. She's alive, living in Arizona with another man. The woman's brow furrowed. She motioned him to sit, then called for a detective. A younger man, Detective Harris, appeared minutes later, holding a notepad. He led Raj into a small interview room. Start from the beginning, Harris said, his tone calm but skeptical. Raj poured everything out. The crash, the burned necklace, the missing items, the forged paperwork, his confrontation with Emily. His voice wavered between rage and despair, hands shaking as he pushed the folder across the table. Detective Harris flipped through the pages. His face gave nothing away. Finally, he asked, Mr. Kapoor, do you have evidence of a crime? Raj blinked. What do you mean? She faked her death. She lied to everyone. She ruined my life. The detective tapped a receipt. I see financial records. I see notes. But none of this proves criminal intent. Fraud requires victims, insurance claims, identity theft, finance on. I'll harm. Did she collect life insurance? Did she take money under false pretenses? Raj faltered. No, but she deceived the authorities. Authorities closed the case because they believed it. That doesn't make it a felony, Harris replied carefully. What you're describing, it sounds like betrayal, yes. Maybe even immoral. But the legal system isn't built to prosecute heartbreak. The words hit Raj like cold water. He leaned forward, desperation spilling out. So she gets to walk free? To laugh with him? To live as though none of it mattered, while I drown every night? That's justice? The detective's jaw tightened. I'm sorry, I can take your statement, but unless new evidence surfaces, something tangible, we can't pursue charges. This isn't about punishment, it's about the law. Raj stared at the tabletop, vision swimming. His folder of evidence suddenly looked pathetic, like the ramblings of a man lost in grief. Detective Harris pushed the papers back toward him. My advice? Walk away. Start over. Don't let this destroy you. But Raj barely heard him. Inside, something cracked wider. The law wouldn't save him. Justice, as he had imagined it, was nothing but an illusion. Later, as he walked out of the precinct, the bright sunlight stung his eyes. Around him, life carried on, cars humming, people laughing, children skipping across the crosswalk. He felt invisible, irrelevant, erased just as thoroughly as Emily had intended. From across the street, he imagined her face, smiling, cold, untouchable. She had beaten the system as easily as she had beaten him. Raj clenched his fists. If justice wouldn't come from the law, then it would have to come another way. The night after leaving the precinct, Raj sat awake at his kitchen table, the folder of rejected evidence spread before him. Harris's words echoed like a curse. Fraud requires victims. Raj had no intention of being dismissed as a fool again, so he dug deeper. For days, he retraced every detail Emily had left behind. He called their old insurance company, pressed them for records, and discovered what he hadn't known before. A life insurance payout had been filed under his name, forged with uncanny precision. The money, tens of thousands, had been redirected into an account Raj never knew existed. His chest tightened, fury and vindication colliding. This is the crime. This is the key. He returned to the precinct, this time slamming the proof onto Harris's desk. The detective's skepticism faltered as he scanned the forms, the fraudulent signature, the money trail. This changes everything, Harris muttered. Within weeks, investigators unearthed more. Emily hadn't acted alone. Her lover, Daniel, the man Raj had glimpsed in Arizona, had helped orchestrate it. Witnesses came forward. A notary who vaguely remembered the couple, a motel clerk who recalled their cash payments. The story unraveled like a knot pulled too tight. Emily and Daniel weren't ghosts anymore. They were conspirators. The arrest was quiet, but the ripple was thunderous. Raj wasn't there when the cuffs closed around Emily's wrists, but he imagined her eyes widening, the mask cracking. The local news seized the story. Wife who faked death for insurance fraud captured in Arizona. Reporters lingered outside Raj's small house, hungry for a statement. He shut the blinds, his silence heavier than words. Months later, the courtroom smelled of varnish and old carpet, the hum of murmurs bouncing off high ceilings. Raj sat in the gallery, his hands folded tightly, watching as Emily was led in, her wrists shackled. For a moment, time collapsed. The same woman who once whispered love in his ear now stood as a stranger, her expression calm, unreadable. When her eyes met his, something twisted in his gut. There was no apology in her stare. Only defiance, perhaps even pride. The years of grief, doubt, obsession, all compressed into that single exchange. The prosecutor laid out the case with clinical precision. Insurance fraud, falsification of documents, conspiracy to deceive state authorities. The paper trail was undeniable. Daniel, desperate to save himself, had turned witness, admitting their plan and exposing Emily as its architect. Raj listened, his breath shallow, as evidence was displayed. Receipts, forged signatures, recordings of Daniel's confession. Each detail confirmed what he had known all along, but hearing it through official voices brought a strange detachment. This wasn't his nightmare anymore. It was theirs. When Emily was called to testify, her voice carried the same controlled poise she'd once used to soothe him. "I felt trapped," she told the jury. "I saw no escape except to disappear. Raj, he never understood me. Daniel offered freedom." Her words sliced through the room. She wasn't confessing. She was justifying. Raj's fists clenched beneath the table, but he didn't move. He simply watched, his silence the only weapon left to him. For the first time, she seemed unnerved by it. The trial stretched for days, each moment layering tension until the air itself seemed brittle. When closing arguments ended, the jury was dismissed, and the courtroom fell into a waiting hush. Raj rose slowly, his eyes locking with Emily's across the aisle. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the two of them, bound by years of love, lies, and betrayal. He searched her face for any flicker of regret. There was none. The gavel struck, calling court back into session. The verdict loomed. The courtroom fell into silence as the jury filed back in, their faces unreadable. Raj's breath slowed, as though the weight of 2 years pressed against his chest. The foreman stood, voice steady, announcing the words that would define Emily's fate. Guilty on all counts. The gavel struck, final and echoing, yet the sound didn't bring Raj relief. Emily's expression barely changed. Even in chains, she radiated control, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on him. For the briefest second, Raj thought he saw a smirk, defiance refusing to die. The sentencing followed swiftly. 10 years in prison for insurance fraud and conspiracy. The judge's tone was stern but measured, reminding the court that justice wasn't about vengeance, but law. Raj listened, motionless, as if the words were being spoken in another language. When it was over, Emily was led away, her figure shrinking behind the heavy doors. Raj didn't move. His friends expected him to stand tall, to feel triumphant. Instead, his body trembled, his palms damp. Winning didn't feel like victory. It felt like surviving a war where everything had already been lost. Outside, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward, questions firing like bullets. Do you feel justice was served? What would you say to Emily now? Raj muttered nothing, pushing through the noise, the cold air biting his face. Freedom from her lies should have felt like oxygen. Instead, it burned like smoke. Nights afterward, Raj sat in his dim kitchen, the silence thick. He stared at the necklace he'd once clutched at the crash site, its metal charred but intact. Once, it symbolized love. Now, it was a relic of betrayal. He set it down gently, unwilling to throw it away, yet unable to hold it close. He tried rebuilding, piece by piece. Work became routine again, the rhythms of normal life slowly knitting together the jagged edges of his days. Friends returned, cautious at first, offering meals, laughter, invitations. Raj forced smiles, grateful yet detached, as though living behind glass. Healing was not a clean wound. It was scar tissue, raw and uneven. At night, memories ambushed him. Emily's laughter, her touch, the lies hidden beneath both. He'd wake with clenched fists, heart racing, haunted not by her absence but by her presence, echoes of a love that was never what he thought. Still, there were glimmers of strength. Therapy sessions peeled back the layers, reminding him he wasn't just a victim, but a survivor. Slowly, Raj began to believe it. Survival, however, came at a cost. Trust shattered, innocence gone. Narration framed his journey with chilling honesty. What does it mean to survive betrayal? Is justice ever enough to mend what's broken inside? The documentary lens lingered on Raj's weary face, the quiet determination in his eyes. He was alive, but different. Scarred, yes, yet refusing to let those scars define him. Emily's story ended behind prison walls, but Raj's continued. He walked trails alone, savoring the silence of the wind, teaching himself to find comfort in solitude rather than fear. Each step forward was heavy, but it was his. Months later, he visited the rural road where it had all begun, the charred trees still standing as silent witnesses to the staged accident. Standing there, Raj whispered to no one, "You didn't take everything." His voice was steady, no longer trembling. The screen faded to black, narration lingering like an open wound. Love can save, but it can also destroy. Betrayal leaves scars no sentence can erase. And survival comes with a price. Raj turned away from the wreckage site, the sun breaking through the horizon. He was still scarred, but he was walking into a future of his own making.